I've always wondered what it would be like to live in the universe with all the Trevor Henderson entities, and I think it would go something like this. You awaken to the thing in the window looking at you again. It's here almost once a week, but that doesn't stop it from sending you onto the floor in a panic. A quick consultation of the danger level tier list doesn't make it any better, as it's ranked in the run category. But no worries, a quick 2-hour lockdown should suffice, just to be sure it's gone. It's safe to say you might be late for work, again. But you're optimistic because there's a Category 5 giant roaming through town, and all you can do is hope that it takes out your office building on its way through. Either way, you should be fine staying home until the government gets this under control. If this sounds like something out of a nightmare, that wouldn't be too far off, as this is just a glimpse into what the average day would be like coexisting with the monsters of the Trevor Henderson universe, and it's nothing sort of a miserable existence. So just in case you're having a bad day in the real world, I'm going to go over how much worse it would be living in the twisted mind with Trevor Henderson's unique artwork. Now, a quick note, I want to go over that this whole video is heavily assumed based off of the images and lore provided on the wikis, so the majority is an educated guess and not canon. I am, however, going to be using the Trevor Henderson tier list that I mentioned at the end of my Logically Surviving video, so keep that all in mind. And I'd love to hear y'all's ideas on what you would think living in this universe would go, so feel free to tell me down in the comments. In my opinion, the only logical way to go about living in this universe would be to assume that some of the creatures are part of a species, meaning there are tons of them, some of them are more rare encounters, and some of them are just one being that are so OP that they have the ability to be anywhere at once, and you just happen to be one of the lucky few to encounter it. Regardless, this would not be new to you, and would likely have government warning systems installed by now, which is why I mentioned the natural disaster-like system for the giants earlier, with the higher category being a bigger and more devastating giant. And that's assuming that the smaller ones wouldn't just be dealt with by the military, and the bigger, more durable ones guided away as soon as possible, as it's likely they wouldn't be able to be killed. Now, to start a video, I'm going to be going over what I like to call the morning essentials. Now, as nice and calming as that sounds, it is way more positive than what it entails. In order to understand this, I need to first make you familiar with the home intruder class, which, if you haven't seen my previous Trevor Henderson video, is a grouping of entities with the interest and special talent of appearing where you feel the most safe and when you're the most vulnerable, aka inside of your home. The main things you want to look into is while you're sleeping and walking around in the dark. So I have a few do's and don'ts that can make it so you avoid waking up to missing family members and a 7-foot-tall reaper waiting to claim what's left. First of all, don't ever turn off all the lights in your house or even your bedroom. Visibility is going to be key for determining a fight or flight scenario. Even if it's just a dim red or blue LED, it's better than pitch blackness. Not that I would even be able to move when it gets dark in this universe, not to mention close my eyes and sleep for 8 hours knowing these things could be eating my cats. And then meanwhile, hours later, the first thing I see when I wake up is the forgotten baby, who is known to move completely silently, with the people being unable to tell even what they're witnessing, because there's a giant disturbing creature that is somehow maneuvering into their bedroom with not so much as a decibel. This is in the too late category for a reason. To prevent this from happening in the first place, do fortify your house upon moving in. By this, I mean, as a bare minimum, invest in some sort of motion alarm systems, and while this sounds terrifying, being able to hear something that's coming down your hallway, at least you're not oblivious to it. Regardless, a security system is a must. Investing in a home with smaller raised windows, as well as finding a way to block your chimney and reinforce your door. Speaking of moving in, choosing a home wouldn't be that much of a blast either. Remember that amazing house 2 neighborhoods over that has a price too good to be true? Well, in this case, it's less because it has hidden damage or something, but rather is in a scissors neighborhood, which, if you're not familiar, essentially becomes infected by this entity that immediately begins to curse the location with increased vandalism and violence. And after weeks in an extremely hellish living scenario, your home has the chance of being chosen. And when it is, nothing can be done but succumb to this thing. Your only hope in this sort of thing would be paying attention and taking advantage of the helpful entities in this universe, such as Longhorse, who is known for warning about harmful things in the future while you're buying and moving into your new home. But that's just one of the many aspects of your new day-to-day life that would be turned upside down by these things. So let's go ahead and move on to our next section. Now, as you can probably assume, going out anywhere in this universe would be a struggle, as you're inevitably going to run into these things. Want to go to the mall? Well, you better hope you're not there too late. The movie theater? Well, I would suggest picking movies with a fuller theater. Even things as simple as staying after class seem to have become dangerous, as some of your teachers may have now been relocated and replaced with something that you might not want to be alone with. not to mention running into a damn 9-foot tall mascot costume that you have never seen in your school before. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm not the most aware person, so I might not notice that there's a 6-foot school bell floating off the ground, and it probably shouldn't be getting closer. But it's assumed that if you do stay in populated locations, you will be less likely to be singled out should an attack happen. In this universe, there's no doubt that these things would be hunting us, but using the herd mentality that many animals use in the wild could save you from disaster. It is likely that due to the deaths these entities would cause daily, the local police forces would institute a curfew for your own safety, as they seem to be more aggressive at night, with some exceptions during the day, of course. So if you can avoid it, don't stay late unless you absolutely have to. The later you stay, the more people will go home, and the easier it is for something to enter your workplace, which, if you're fortunate enough, will contain some sort of guards, but who am I kidding? There's no way the owners will have the budget to institute guards for their employees. Also, this goes without saying, but if you see a person that doesn't look real or something's off about them, don't try to help them no matter how desperate they seem, as this could be an encounter with the stranger, who is known to have a disorienting mental effect that increases the chances of you getting lost. And trust me, it's not a good time for that. At least, not yet. So let's say you found a way to make it through work or school. Now you have to get home. But unfortunately, you accidentally stayed too late, and now it's past the heavily suggested curfew. And to make it worse, you live in a known hotspot for these things. When driving home, you have to not only be extremely aware of driving over bridges because of the threat of bridge worms grabbing your vehicle and pulling you under, which bridge worms, if you are unfamiliar, use fake faces to lure people in before revealing the disturbing underside. They are listed in the second most dangerous category on the tier list and are known for hiding under bridges and underpasses. And if you're thinking, well, I'll be fine because I don't go over bridges when I go home, well, you'll be lucky to know that they have a bigger relative known by the highway worm, who would make traversing any freeway at night, and maybe even during the day, a hellish and fatal mistake. And for those of you who can drive, I don't know if you've had to navigate anywhere without using freeways, but it's not a fun experience, especially at night, and definitely not something I would like to do after a long day of work. There are also plenty of threats that could jump out in the middle of the road and block your path, such as this mutated cow thing known by Big Charlie, or the threat of if you hit any sort of roadkill, then you'd basically be ending your own life right then and there, as it would summon the god of roadkill, who immediately responds to you killing an animal with your car by killing you with your own car, aka a fatal car crash. Back roads aren't any safer, as you would have to be aware of the country road creature, which has a long, lengthy humanoid design that wouldn't have a hard time at all outmaneuvering your car and stealing you straight out of it. So driving kind of sucks now, so what about walking home? Well, I feel like I shouldn't even have to explain this one, but I'm going to anyways. Despite walking home opening up more routes than just roads and bridges and highways, and so far I have yet to hear of something like a sidewalk worm, walking home is still probably one of the riskiest and last things you ever want to do in this universe, as there are just so many creatures that are seen walking around at night. But I'm going to let you be the judge. To start out, we have the Needle, which is a horse-like creature with, as the name entails, a needle-like face that can assumably run you right through and drink everything out of your body, similar to a mosquito. Now, in my How to Logically Survive video, I did explain how to outmaneuver these things. You could easily climb a tree, as they do bear a lot of similarities to horses, who also, as you probably know, can't climb trees. But as you can assume, that wouldn't be the safest option either. So if you plan on making it to your destination safe, I have a couple of tips for you. The first of which being, do stay on major pathways. Although streets do contain dangerous entities as mentioned before, they often mark well-lit routes, and trust me, you're going to want to see these things because there's a good chance they don't need the light to see you. Not to mention, as I will talk about later, as much as it will seem, the things that you could run into lost in the woods or, God forbid, some sort of abandoned building are way, way worse. So I don't recommend you lingering too long in one place. You need to keep moving, even if slowly and calculated. The longer you stay in one spot, the higher the chance of something unwanted catching up to you, or gaining the confidence to come out of its hiding spot. However, it's smart that you do use common sense, and when you choose to risk walking past or near something, you should be able to deduct that those are not Halloween decorations, it is December. So if you see something hanging, you should probably not be there much longer. And finally, don't bother taking public transport, as they will be there too. But if you do want a faster method that isn't a car, there is a compromise of using a bike. Now, when you do make it to about a mile of your home, it's important to look around your surroundings and make sure you aren't being followed. because in this universe this could be a consistent problem. Hell, there is even something called It Followed You Home. You need to keep in mind that as dark as it sounds, there are plenty of other people in this universe. There is no need to make yourself its target, and the only way to do that is by being aware. Okay, so you've now miraculously made it home from work or school. Now what? You'll be happy to know that if you were able to get out of your home, there's a good chance while you were gone, something was able to get into your home. Now, while it would be nice to have a smart home security system built in with like a Ring doorbell and something so you can see exactly what entered your house during the day, with as simple as a Alexa, how many entities came to the front door today? I'm gonna be real with y'all, I'm not gonna be able to afford shit like that. So I'd be stuck doing things the old-fashioned way, being walking around the house with your weapon of choice and checking every closet and hiding place for one of these nature's wonders that may have been waiting for me, especially something like the homebody or the nervous house guest, which the latter primarily stays outside on my roof, but again, I don't feel like getting snatched the second I walk into my backyard or when going out to check the mail or taking out the trash. Once you check your whole house, don't forget to lock up everything behind you and use anything you can to bar the door, and I would also suggest covering all the windows, because it is assumed that if you give them nothing to look at but blinds, entities like the peeping Tom will just move on to the next home. Oh, and one last thing, you're going to want to make sure that your pet is still your pet, as if you hear something like dog noises when you have a cat, there's no need for panic quite yet, as it could just be an anxious dog that figured its way into your house. Now, why these things are by default hostile creatures, you'll be okay as long as you follow my advice, although I wouldn't be as hopeful for your pet. But hey, I'm optimistic for their chances. All you have to do for anxious dogs is, despite their horrific and utterly disturbing nature, we can take some tips from the Mayfair Watcher Society that these originally derived from and treat them like a pet. Now hear me out. Apparently, similar to real pets, they mimic your body language, meaning if you treat them like a puppy, they'll act like one, and if you treat them like you're extremely disturbed and you're afraid of them, well then they'll give you something to really fear. Now on the bright side, I do have a theory that if you are able to tame them, they would make great guard dogs? Sure, we'll go with dogs. So you made it home, checked and locked your house, and even tamed a guard dog. So now you can hopefully get some rest. Until the giant walking through the city happens to wander through your neighborhood. Okay, screw this shit. I think we need a vacation from all of this. Somewhere nice, but where can we take a vacation? Maybe the forest? Well, I'm not so sure about that one. What about a nice Airbnb? That could be a good idea, until you remember going into random new houses isn't the smartest. Okay, it must be okay to relax on the beach, right? Alright, this is getting ridiculous. Since staying in one spot anywhere in this universe does not seem to be the best idea, perhaps something like hiking or backpacking through the calm countryside might be the best possible option. Now, I'm not going to lie to you and say this is completely safe, but compared to the other options, this has the highest survival rate. But of course, we're going to need to take some precautions. But on the bright side, these giants do make life miserable for you and everyone around you, but at least from a distance, they're in a way cool to look at. It almost makes you forget how truly unfathomable a creature of that size would be. But I wouldn't stare too long, because then the others might take the time to figure out your route. In order to make your hiking experience better, do find some place to make camp for the night well before the sun sets. And whatever you do, don't make any form of fire or use any form of light. While this does make it so you can see everything in a nearby vicinity, just figured out exactly where you're going to be sleeping. I recommend just using a thermal sleeping bag and sleeping under a bush or inside of a hollowed out log. And of course, making sure no one saw you going into it. And no matter how tempting it is, don't take shelter in that abandoned building. Wait, I said don't. Don't go in an abandoned building. Well, now you're lost. I hope it was worth it. But I don't blame you too much, as there are many ways you could have ended up lost throughout this entire time, such as taking a desperate detour because something undesirable gets in your usual path, or simply because you're stuck face to face with something you can't quite fathom, but you feel like staying here even a single second more might not be the best option. Now, accidentally getting lost would be a key element of life in the Trevor Henderson universe, and I don't know if you guys have ever gotten lost by yourself at night, but that on its own is a traumatic experience, not to mention adding these creatures into the equation. The first thing to ensure survival is to figure out where you've ended up. These things don't necessarily have guaranteed locations, but there are areas that I can assume they exist around based on their names and pictures. For an example, the marionette in the horrifically named Decoy for Humans seems to hang around parks at night and assumably are more likely to be there. The biggest entity hotspots seem to be abandoned buildings though, as we see many images of these creatures using them to hide inside, likely during the day. So when lost, definitely don't go inside of buildings that you come across, as you might not like what's been living inside for a long time now. However, if you find yourself inside of an abandoned building, do stay as quiet as possible. You need to realize that this is their home, and they're going to be a lot better at traversing it in the dark than you are. Picture it as if you were some sort of bug and you fell into a spider's web. It's going to do anything to try to lure you into exposing your location. Some of these creatures use baits in the form of camouflage like Mr. Bags, or in rare cases, there is a creature known as the dove, otherwise known as the bird spider, that mimics a sort of bird lure, while a real spider in this metaphor hides just out of sight. Finding yourself inside of these infested buildings are a terrifying experience, but if you do somehow, you also have the added responsibility of making sure that you don't, for the love of God, let anything out. Especially this one entity in particular, going by the man in the red room, that hangs from the ceiling and maneuvers around inside of a cruel red glow. It is supposedly able to manipulate people into its building through dreams to accidentally, or in some cases purposely, free it. So it's not uncommon that if you'd find yourself lost at night, you would also find yourself ending up inside of this building, adding another worry to your list. And I have no clue what this thing is capable of, so above all, don't let him out. But I wouldn't blame you if you did, because of the whole panicking thing. So all in all, you did your best. But hey, at least once it's free, you might have doomed humanity, but it likely has bigger plans than hunting you down. Regardless, your best bet when getting lost in this universe is staying put until some sort of natural light appears. And then when day breaks, you'll be able to hopefully naturally find your way back home. Assuming you haven't, of course, wandered your way into a forest. So far, living in this universe seems hellish and full of constant fear. And now, upon returning to your destroyed home, you remember why you left in the first place. But it's not all bad, because living in a universe like this would likely prevent lots and lots of new jobs that you could take up in order to pay for those damages. Mostly for a new type of researcher that specializes in entity investigation and home intrusion. This would likely be in the form of a new phone service that would need to be set up alongside 911 that deals with specifically home intrusions, assaults, and kidnappings by these entities, which would likely be going rampant. If you've ever heard of the indie game Home Safety Hotline, you play as a pest control operator that answers calls on strange entities and pests alike, and you give advice on how to get rid of them. And I feel like something similar in this universe could improve the quality of living greatly. Is there a two-headed clown infesting your basement? Well, I suggest bolting that door shut and forgetting you have one. An odd text just summoned a mischievous bone creature and it's tormenting your family? Well, it's as simple as forwarding his text into a chain message and watching all your troubles fade away. A cartoon-looking cat has made its way into your bedroom? Well, no use continuing that call. Now, entity investigation in this universe would also provide a lot more insight on what these creatures are exactly and what they could possibly do. I recently read an extremely cool comment on my last Trevor Henderson video that was a fan talking about how the body of the pig is actually a lot more dangerous than most people think, as not only does its name entail that it could possibly be a demon, pigs are also omnivores, meaning if it catches you, not only would you die, it would eat you alive. It's information like this that could be put into an SCP-like database as a way of understanding these entities better, and therefore making everyone a little more optimistic about their quality of life. So you got a new job, had a halfway decent vacation that only almost killed you every once in a while, and your house is now slowly being repaired due to the money you're raking in from your new dangerous yet high-paying job. You finally can relax, sitting in front of a fireplace. This is your one form of peace that you felt since coming here. Except now, your anxious dog is nowhere to be seen, and the tiniest rustle of the carpet prompts you to look into the mirror to your side, just in time to see your last seconds flash before your eyes before the forgotten baby who you had forgotten about silently entered your house while you were relaxing and turned your lights out instantly. Yep, that is all it would take. One slip up and it's all over. Unfortunately, this is the norm here, as unlike our life where people can live to their 80s, 90s, and even 100s, in the Trevor Henderson universe, the life expectancy would be 30s and blessed to reach 40. One of the most depressing aspects is no matter how hard you try, this is not just one encounter you would survive. It's a whole life, and you can only get so many lucky breaks before one of these creatures catches up with you and takes you off guard. The terrifying aspects of Trevor's art is the fact that, if you think about it, 90% of them are drawn as the probable last photos that these people are ever going to take. Hypothetically, of course. Sorry, it's so fun to get immersed in these universes by making videos. Anyways, that's going to be it for this one, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed your life in the Trevor Henderson universe. If you guys want me to do this for other forms of internet horror, give me some suggestions down in the comments below. I'd love to do more. And if you made it this far, comment down below the creature you'd be most scared to coexist with. Thank you guys so much for watching. I can't wait to make more horror content for you guys in the future. Peace.
Well, that was quite an adventure. I'm sad to see you go, but don't worry, this doesn't have to be the last time we see each other. I got another cool video. Just for you. Hurry, the video's almost over.